encouraging developments yesterday with the visit of German Chancellor to South Africa, Olaf Scholz. Among the initiatives announced, a tech consortium to help produce green jet fuels and assist with the just transition to carbon-neutral energy. So what happens now? Let's speak to the German ambassador to South Africa, Andreas Peschke. Ambassador, thank you very much for your time. So the most exciting thing, the thing that jumped out for me, is this green jet fuel program. I understand it's in conjunction with the oil from gas innovating company Sasol. I know it's still early days, but talk to me about how this consortium is going to take shape practically and develop green jet fuel.
Well, first of all, good evening, and thank you for talking to me tonight about the visit. We think it was a very successful visit with a number of results in a variety of areas, covering a broad range of our bilateral relationship. And our support, our cooperation on the energy transition is, of course, one of the cornerstones of our cooperation today. And the cooperation on the production of green, sustainable aviation fuel is one element of this partnership. So we have the South African company Sasol cooperating with German research institutions on a research reactor to produce green, sustainable aviation fuel. So what the Chancellor and the President did yesterday was to inaugurate this cooperation. Now the company and our institutions will get together and try to continue work with this research reactor, because the aim is of this research to make this procedure, to take it from the research level to the industrial level, so that this aviation fuel, sustainable aviation fuel, may be produced on an industrial level, which would be quite an important step forward. As the Chancellor mentioned yesterday, Germans like to travel, South Africans like to travel, and Germans also like to travel to South Africa because for reasons of tourism, for reasons of visiting. And imagine they come here and don't have to have a bad conscience that while coming here, they are using kerosene that is not good for our environment, but they are coming here using sustainable aviation fuel. So that would be quite an important step forward for the people and, of course, for the environment.
Do you have any idea of how long it's going to take before our flights, the aeroplanes are filled with this green jet fuel? I mean, are we talking like 10, 15 years down the line, or is it going to be shorter than that?
Well, I would hope it's going to be shorter. It's difficult to make any prediction, because I think what the scientists, the researchers and the collaborators now have to do is to get to practice. I think in theory, the procedure and the research reactor seems to be working quite well. But of course, now it's also a question of getting the right ingredients, because what you also would need to make it sustainable on an industrial level is, of course, the right green ingredients, like, for instance, green hydrogen. So we know that on the issue of green hydrogen, our countries also have to work, because green hydrogen also needs to be produced on an industrial level. So that is also in the wider context of the project, also a part of it, to reach a stage where our countries can produce green hydrogen, and then we will move forward. But it will take some time, and it will take a lot of committed efforts by the people of both our countries, by our experts, to move it forward.
Why is Germany committed to South Africa? And I ask that because we face a lot of challenges in this country. Obviously, like many countries, we're recovering from COVID, but we had financial problems before that. We've been criticized for having a lot of red tape, for making it difficult for foreign companies to do business. Perhaps the biggest problem is our unstable electricity supply. It's fantastic to see that Germany wants to do business with us. But how does Germany view these very real problems, and why isn't it a barrier to entry for your country?
I think all of our countries face their own challenges. We have a lot of challenges in Germany as well, and in Europe. Of course, we are aware that South Africa also has its own challenges. You have mentioned a few of them. But for us, from the perspective of Germany, South Africa is one of our prime partners and prime interlocutors on the African continent. When we look to the African continent, on today's Africa Day, I think we look with a particular attention to South Africa, because when we want to do positive things in Africa, many of us want to start here in South Africa in terms of cooperation. So it is quite promising. The problems you have mentioned are there, but the potential is also there. There's an industrial basis in South Africa. There is high technology and a lot of intelligent brains in South Africa. So there's a broad base for cooperation. And for us, you know, this cooperation with South Africa really has a strategic element to it. We consider South Africa to be a strategic partner. It is a strategic partnership we are talking about. We have been here for many years. And actually, the goal of the visit yesterday was to take this partnership to another level, to enhance it, and to enhance it in a variety of areas.
So there's lots of agreement, cooperation, friendly relations yesterday. But one thing where we clearly saw a difference is in the stance that South Africa has taken on the Russia-Ukraine war. South Africa has been at pains to say it remains neutral, but also slamming the sanctions, saying they are not helping, they are hurting other countries. We know that Germany stands fully in support of action, sanctions pressure on Russia. There are clear differences, and those were evident yesterday in the way both men spoke about the Russia-Ukraine war. Is that something that could get in the way of good relations?
Let us start with what we think jointly on this terrible war in Eastern Europe. That is that South Africa and Germany are both agreed that this war needs to stop as soon as possible. Every day this war continues to rage is one day too much. So we are agreed that we need to stop this war as soon as possible. Of course, there are differences in the way we perceive this war and in the way we see the way forward to come out of this war. That is true. But we thought it is also the sign of a strong friendship and partnership that partners talk about their differences. So that's what our leaders did yesterday. Our Chancellor tried to understand more of the reasons for the South African position and try to explain why we are there in Germany where we are on this conflict. Because I think it's a conflict directly in our European neighborhood, so we are directly affected by the conflict. We have currently 700,000 refugees from Ukraine in Germany. Some of our neighboring countries like Poland even have more. So that is just to give you an idea of the dimension we are facing. So we talked about it, and I think it is important from our point of view also in Europe to understand that this conflict is not only affecting Ukraine, is not only affecting Europe, but that it has very dire consequences all over the world. Look at the rising energy prices, look at the rising food prices. So this is an issue that needs to be discussed. It's an issue that affects many other countries in the world directly, also South Africa. And I think it is an issue we have to address also in the international fora, like in the G7, like in the United Nations. So that is something that the Chancellor and the President also discussed yesterday, because the Chancellor invited the President for the G7 summit to take place in June in Germany.
Right.
And the issue of food security, the issue of energy security in these times of conflict and war is a very important issue that we need to that we have to discuss.
Yeah, but just an answer to my question. You said that the German Chancellor tried to understand South Africa's position and South Africa tried to understand Germany's position. They're different positions, quite different positions. Is it potentially going to become a problem, those different positions?
Well, the task for us as diplomats and politicians is to chart a joint way forward, because at the end of the day, we can solve these international problems only together. And I think that was the philosophy with which the Chancellor had these talks here in South Africa. And no, it is not going to stand in the way of enhanced cooperation between South Africa and Germany, because our view on this would be that, in these times, in these challenging times of conflict, of war, and not only in Ukraine but in other parts of the world as well, I think what we need to do as democracies, South Africa, as Germany, as partners, is to join hands to overcome these conflicts and to make things better, not worse. And I think it's a time for cooperation and enhanced partnership. So that is how the Chancellor entered these talks. And I have a feeling that it's the same position also from the South African side.
All right. Thank you very much. Do appreciate your time this evening. That's the German ambassador to South Africa, Andreas Peschke.